The house was quiet after dinner, the kind of silence that settles only when everyone has gone to their rooms and the day has finally exhaled. Clara sat alone in the kitchen, a half-finished cup of tea beside her. The steam had faded, leaving the air still and cool. She glanced at the clock. 10:47 p.m. Michael should have been home hours ago. He'd called earlier to say he had to wrap up a meeting, his voice calm and professional, the same tone he used for everything lately. It wasn't new. For months now, Clara had grown used to his absence, both the physical and emotional kind. He had changed quietly, in small, almost invisible ways. Less laughter at dinner, fewer questions about her day, and more nights when his phone never left his hand. She tried not to think too much. Maybe it was work pressure. Maybe the years had just dulled what they once had. But deep inside she felt it, the growing space between them. It was strange how love could still exist but no longer feel warm. The sound of footsteps broke her thoughts. Soft, hesitant ones coming from the hallway. Clara looked up to see her son, Evan, standing near the door. His hair was messy, his expression uncertain. He was 18, tall like his father, but his eyes gentle and open were hers. "Mom," he said quietly, "you're still awake." Clara smiled faintly, trying to sound lighter than she felt. Couldn't sleep? Too many thoughts. Evan hesitated before walking in, rubbing his hands together as if trying to gather courage. I wanted to talk to you, but maybe now's not the right time." She gestured for him to sit. "Now's fine. It's just us." He sat down across from her, the chair creaking in the silence. The kitchen light was dim, casting soft shadows on the walls. Clara noticed how nervous he looked, like he was holding something he didn't want to say. Her chest tightened a little. "Evan," she said softly, "whatever it is, you can tell me." He looked down, playing with the edge of his sleeve. "It's about Dad." Clara froze. The name hit her like a small jolt. "Your dad?" He nodded slowly. "I didn't want to say anything because I wasn't sure. And I don't want to make things worse." "Evan," she said gently, "you're scaring me. Just tell me." He took a deep breath. "I think Dad's hiding something from you." The words seemed to hang in the air. For a moment, Clara didn't move. The kitchen clock ticked once, twice. "What do you mean?" she finally asked. Evan looked at her with a mixture of guilt and sadness. "Last weekend, I went to get gas near the lake. You know that cafe by the water? The one with the blue umbrellas?" She nodded slowly. She and Michael had gone there years ago, back when weekends meant coffee and laughter. "I saw him there," Evan continued, "with someone. A woman. They were sitting close, talking, laughing. He looked happy." Clara's hands went cold. She wanted to ask questions. What did she look like? What exactly were they doing? But the details didn't matter. The image was already painted in her mind, clear and painful. Evan's voice softened. "I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe it was just a client or someone from work. But Mom," they were holding hands. The last words broke through the quiet like glass. Clara didn't cry, not yet. She just sat still, feeling her heartbeat in her throat. "Are you sure?" she whispered. He nodded. "I saw it clearly. I didn't know what to do. I drove off right away. But it's been eating at me. I couldn't keep it from you anymore." Clara looked down at her tea. The surface was still cold, untouched. For a moment, everything inside her felt suspended, like her thoughts were waiting for her heart to catch up. She didn't want to believe her son, but she couldn't deny the feeling that had lived quietly in her for months. The distant hugs. The late-night messages. The way Michael always avoided eye contact when she asked simple questions. She pressed her lips together, trying to steady her voice. "Thank you for telling me, Evan. That must have been hard." He nodded, eyes glassy. "I just didn't want to hurt you." "You didn't," she said softly, though it wasn't true. "You did the right thing." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was fragile, the kind that could break with one wrong word. Clara stood and walked to the window, looking out into the darkness. The neighborhood was asleep, lights out in every house. Everything looked peaceful, ordinary. But her world had tilted slightly, enough that she knew nothing would feel the same again. She turned back to her son. "Evan, promise me something," she said quietly. "Don't tell anyone." "Not yet. Let me figure out what to do." He nodded, his jaw tight with worry. "Of course." She reached out and touched his shoulder gently. "You're a good son. Thank you." When he went to his room, the house fell silent again, but it was a different kind of silence now. It carried weight, the kind that made her chest ache. Clara sat back down, staring at her tea until it turned completely cold. Her thoughts spun between anger, disbelief, and heartbreak. She remembered how she and Michael had met college sweethearts who used to stay up all night dreaming about the future. They'd built a life, raised a son, shared promises. She had believed that love could survive anything. But somewhere along the way, something had shifted, quietly and slowly, until the distance became normal. Now, the truth had slipped in through the quiet, brought not by an argument or discovery, but by the voice of her son. That made it hurt even more. Clara stood, rinsed her cup, and turned off the kitchen light. As she climbed the stairs, she passed the framed wedding photo on the wall. In it, they were smiling, young, full of hope. She stopped and looked at it for a long time, her reflection overlapping their faces. She touched the frame lightly. "What happened to us?" she whispered. Upstairs, Evan's door was closed, and she could hear faint music playing from his room. She smiled sadly. He was trying to drown out the worry, just like she was. When Clara finally lay in bed, the sheets felt too cold. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of the night. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring or how to confront Michael. But one thing she knew for sure: her son had told her the truth because he loved her, and she couldn't ignore it. As she closed her eyes, one tear slid down her cheek. It wasn't just from betrayal, it was from the quiet breaking of something she thought was unshakable. And in that silence between the ache and the stillness, Clara made a quiet promise to herself. No more pretending, no more waiting for someone else to fix what was broken. Tomorrow, she would face the truth. No matter how much it hurt, Clara barely slept that night. Her mind replayed Evan's words again and again, like an echo she couldn't turn off. By morning, she felt hollowed, too tired to cry, too numb to think clearly. The sunlight came through the kitchen window, but even that felt dull. She moved through her routine like a machine: coffee, toast, dishes, but everything around her seemed heavier, slower. Michael had texted earlier, saying he'd be busy all day and would call later. The message was short, polite, and cold. She read it twice, her fingers trembling slightly. Busy. He always said that lately. Busy with meetings, busy with travel, busy with life that no longer included her. She put the phone down and took a deep breath. There was no denying it now. Her son had seen it with his own eyes. It wasn't gossip or suspicion, it was truth. And once truth entered the heart, there was no pushing it out. Evan came into the kitchen, dressed for school, trying to act normal. "Morning, Mom," he said softly. "Morning," Clara replied, forcing a smile. He hesitated before sitting down. "Did you sleep at all?" "A little," she lied. "I'm okay." He nodded, though he didn't believe her. The worry in his eyes said everything. Before leaving, he placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Just promise me you won't let him hurt you more." Clara looked up at him and whispered, "I won't, sweetheart." When he left, the quiet returned, the same quiet where the truth had first arrived. She sat down and stared at her coffee, her thoughts spinning. She needed to hear it from Michael himself. She deserved that. No shouting, no fighting, just the truth spoken out loud. That afternoon, she called him. The phone rang 3 times before he answered. "Hey, Clara," he said casually. "Everything okay?" Her heart thudded. "When will you be home?" she asked. "Tomorrow night. I told you about this conference, remember?" "Yes," she said slowly. "The one near the lake." There was a pause, just a second too long. "Yeah, that one." She could almost hear him swallow on the other end. "Why do you ask?" "Oh, nothing," she said, her voice calm. "Just making sure." They said a few more polite things before hanging up. But that short pause told her more than words ever could. He was lying. He wasn't away for work. He was close enough to meet that woman again. By evening, Clara made a decision. She changed into a light jacket, grabbed her car keys, and drove. The cafe by the lake wasn't far, just 15 minutes through winding streets lined with autumn trees. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel as she approached the familiar spot. When she arrived, the parking lot was half full. The lake glimmered softly in the fading sun. And there he was, sitting at a corner table near the window. Her husband, Michael Dot, and beside him the woman. Clara's breath caught. The woman was younger, maybe early 30s, with bright hair and an easy smile. They were leaning in close, laughing at something. Michael looked relaxed, his eyes soft in a way she hadn't seen in years. She didn't go in. She didn't need to. The truth was right there, framed by the cafe's glass window. A truth that hurt, but also, strangely, brought clarity. Clara sat in her car for a long moment, watching quietly. The betrayal wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, like everything else that had changed in their marriage. Quiet dinners. Quiet words. Quiet distance. Finally, she started the car and drove away. The road home felt endless, her eyes blurring with unshed tears. She wasn't angry yet, just deeply, deeply sad. When she reached home, the sky had turned dark. She walked straight to her bedroom and opened the drawer where she kept old memories letters. Photos, ticket stubs from their early years. She pulled out one of the letters, written in Michael's handwriting. It was dated 22 years ago, back when they were newly married. Clara, I can't wait to see you. I miss the sound of your voice and the way you laugh. You make everything better. She read the words twice, her hands shaking. It felt like reading someone else's life. She sat on the bed, the letter trembling in her hands. When had they stopped talking? When had the laughter turned into polite small talk? Maybe the change had started years ago when life got busy. When they stopped holding hands, when love quietly faded behind routines and unspoken disappointments. Clara didn't blame herself entirely, but she couldn't ignore that both of them had drifted away. She had been loyal, patient, forgiving, but he had chosen to look for warmth elsewhere. That night, she didn't tell Evan what she had seen. He had done enough by telling her the truth. She wanted to protect him from the pain of watching his father's choices destroy the family. So she kept it inside. When Michael finally came home the next evening, she met him at the door. He smiled, his tone casual. "Hey, sweetheart. Missed you." Clara looked at him quietly. "How was your trip?" "Busy, as always," he said, setting down his bag. "Long meetings. You know how it is." She studied his face, the same eyes she once trusted, the same mouth that had once whispered love to her. "You didn't go to the conference," she said softly. Michael froze. "What are you talking about?" Her voice stayed calm. "I saw you. At the cafe by the lake. With her." The color drained from his face. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to deny it. But he couldn't. The silence between them said everything. "Clara," he started. She raised her hand. "Don't. Not now. I don't want excuses. I just needed the truth." His shoulders slumped. It wasn't supposed to go this far. She nodded slowly, but it did. The room went quiet. The clock ticked softly, the same sound that had filled their nights for years. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Clara looked at him with eyes that no longer trembled. "I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix what's already broken." He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. For the first time in a long time, she felt something she hadn't felt before: clarity. The pain was deep, but the fog was gone. That night, she slept in Evan's old room, listening to the rain tapping softly against the window. She didn't cry this time. Instead, she felt a strange peace. The truth had hurt her. Yes, but it had also freed her. In the morning, she wrote a letter. Not to Michael, but to herself. She wrote down everything she wanted to remember: her strength, her dignity, her worth. She ended it with one simple line: "I will not let betrayal define me." When she folded the paper, the sun was rising outside, painting the sky gold. It was a new day, different, uncertain, but hers. And as the house stirred awake, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The next morning came too early, with the weak winter light spilling across the curtains. Clara hadn't really slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Michael's face at that cafe, smiling, relaxed, his hand over another woman's. It felt like a scene from someone else's life, yet it was hers. But now that she knew the truth, she couldn't live pretending anymore. The shock had passed. What remained was a quiet resolve. She wanted answers, not to fight, not to beg, just to understand how love had slipped away without her noticing. Michael moved around the kitchen as if nothing had happened. He poured himself coffee, asked how her night was, and talked about the weather. His tone was calm, almost too normal. That normalcy hurt more than any argument. It meant he believed she would let it go, that she would pretend like before. Clara didn't want to pretend anymore when he left for work. She walked to the study and opened the old wooden drawer where she kept mementos from their early years letters. Postcards, little notes he used to leave on the fridge. Each one carried his handwriting, his old warmth. One note read, "Don't forget our walk tonight. You and me always." Another said, "You make home feel like the best place in the world." She read them slowly, her eyes stinging. Those words used to feel real. Now they felt like echoes from a man who no longer existed. Among the letters was an unopened envelope with her name on it. She didn't remember it. The paper was yellowed slightly, tucked behind an old family photo. She opened it carefully. It was dated years ago, around the time their son was 10. The letter began, "Clara, I don't know why, but I feel us slipping away. I still love you, but something feels off. I miss how we used to be." Her hands trembled as she read on. "I wish we could talk more. I know I get lost in work, but sometimes I don't know how to fix it. I don't want to lose you." Tears rolled down her cheeks. Michael had written this long before things had gotten bad. He had seen the distance growing too. Maybe he had been reaching out back then, and she had been too busy keeping the house, raising their son, and running through her own exhaustion to notice. The letter was both heartbreaking and strangely comforting. It reminded her that there had been love once, real and deep. But it also made her realize how quietly love could fade when left unattended by afternoon. She sat outside on the porch with a notebook in her lap. The air was crisp, the trees bare, and the neighborhood quiet. She started writing, not to him, but to herself. She wrote about who she was before she became Michael's wife. She wrote about the young woman who loved painting, the one who laughed easily and believed in forever. Somewhere over the years, she had buried that version of herself under routines and responsibilities. As the sun dipped lower, she heard a car pull into the driveway. Her heart tightened. Michael was home early. She tucked the notebook under her arm and stood. He walked in, tired, cautious, as if sensing a storm. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," she replied. He put his keys down. "We didn't really talk last night." "No," she said. "We didn't." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Clara, I'm not proud of what I did. It wasn't planned. I didn't mean for it to happen." She looked at him steadily. "Then why didn't you stop it?" He didn't answer at first. "Because I was lonely," he admitted. "I felt invisible. You stopped looking at me like you used to." The words cut deep, but she stayed calm. "We both got lonely, Michael. The difference is you found someone to fill it. I tried to hold on." He lowered his head. "I never stopped caring about you." "Caring?" she said quietly. "That's not love, Michael. That's guilt wearing a kind face." For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't angry. It was heavy with everything left unsaid over the years. Finally, she asked, "Who is she?" He hesitated, then whispered, "A coworker. Her name is Amy." Clara nodded slowly. She didn't want details. Knowing the name was enough. "Does she know you're married?" "Yes," he said, shame in his eyes. Clara took a deep breath. "Then she deserves your honesty too. Because if you can lie to me, you can lie to her." Michael's face fell. "I'm sorry." She looked away, her voice steady but tired. "You're sorry now because you've been caught. But I think the truth is you were unhappy and too afraid to face it. Instead of fixing us, you escaped." He didn't deny it. The silence that followed was long, but in that stillness, Clara found something she hadn't felt in a long time: control. After a while, she said, "I'm not sure what happens next. I'm not ready to make decisions right now. But I know this something has to change." Michael nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "I understand." When he went upstairs, Clara stayed in the living room, staring out the window. The streetlights flickered on, glowing softly. She felt broken, yes, but also awake. For years, she had let her life shrink to fit inside someone else's story. Now, for the first time, she wanted to write her own. Later that night, Evan came home from a friend's house. He saw her sitting on the couch, her eyes red but calm. "Did you talk to him?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "Yes. And—" He told the truth. Evan hesitated. "Are you okay?" Clara smiled weakly. "Not yet, but I will be." He sat beside her, silent but close. That simple act of love, her son's quiet presence, felt like the only steady thing left in her world. Before bed, Clara returned to the drawer and placed Michael's old letter back inside. She didn't tear it or throw it away. Instead, she folded it carefully and set it beside her own notebook. It reminded her that love, once real, didn't have to vanish, could evolve into something different, even if painful. That night, she stood by the window, watching the lights shimmer across the quiet street. The world outside kept moving, even when hearts broke. Somewhere deep inside, she felt the first small spark of strength return. The betrayal had shown her something unexpected. She was capable of surviving even the hardest truth. As she turned off the lights, she whispered softly to herself, "This isn't the end. It's the start of something new." And for the first time in months, Clara believed it. The days after Michael's confession passed slowly, each one filled with quiet reflection. Clara woke early each morning, the sun spilling across the living room floor, and drank her coffee in silence. She didn't try to hide her thoughts anymore or pretend that everything was fine. The truth had changed everything, and she could no longer live in denial. Evan noticed her distance but didn't press. He understood she needed space to process, and he respected it. Sometimes he would sit with her on the porch, just watching the streetlights flicker or listening to the faint hum of traffic, giving her the room to breathe without words. Clara started to think about herself in ways she hadn't for years. She remembered the person she used to be before marriage, before routines, before compromise had blurred her sense of identity. She began small walking in the neighborhood, taking short trips to the library, revisiting the books she used to love. Every step reminded her that life could still hold joy, even if it felt fragile. She realized that strength wasn't about ignoring pain. It was about facing it with eyes wide open. One evening, Michael returned from work earlier than usual. Clara had been in the study, writing in her notebook, trying to sort out her thoughts. When he entered, he paused, sensing the shift in the air. The man she had once trusted was now a stranger standing at her doorway, carrying the weight of his mistakes. "Clara," he said, voice tentative, "can we talk?" She closed her notebook slowly and gestured for him to sit. "We can," she replied. Michael lowered himself into the chair, avoiding her gaze. "I know I hurt you," he began, "and I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I want to try to fix this if you'll let me." Clara studied him. She wanted to speak, to tell him how much he had betrayed her, but she knew anger would not help. "I don't know if this can be fixed," she said quietly. "Trust isn't something you can rebuild with words alone." "I know," he admitted, his voice soft. "I'll do whatever it takes. I don't want to lose us." Her eyes softened slightly, though she kept her posture strong. "We'll see. I need time. I need honesty. And I need you to understand that caring about someone doesn't erase the choices you've made." He nodded. "I understand. And I'll prove it if you let me." For the next few days, Clara noticed small changes. Michael tried to reconnect, not with grand gestures, but with consistency. He did simple things, helped Evan with homework, made her coffee in the morning, asked genuinely about her day. Clara didn't let herself hope too much. She had been hurt before, and she knew that trust couldn't be rushed. Still, she observed, silently measuring his actions against his promises. Evan watched the shifts carefully, too. He still carried the memory of the cafe, the sight of his father smiling with someone else. But he also saw his mother standing taller, more certain. She laughed lightly at the dinner table, her words sharper, more confident. He realized she was learning to reclaim herself even as the family around her tried to hold together. One night after Evan had gone to bed, Clara sat on the porch with Michael. The stars reflected faintly in the dark lake nearby, the same lake where betrayal had first been revealed. They didn't speak at first. Silence stretched between them, but it felt different, less tense, more fragile and tentative. "Do you remember the early days?" Michael asked finally. "When we used to walk by this lake, just talking, dreaming?" Clara nodded. "I do. It felt simple then, easy, happy. It still can be," he said. "I don't expect everything to go back to how it was, but maybe we can start againistly this time." She considered his words carefully. Start again isn't simple. It's not just about us. It's about me, too. About who I've been while you were away. Michael's eyes were serious. "I know, and I want to be part of that if you'll let me." Clara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past months pressing on her chest. She thought about all the lonely nights, all the quiet moments when she had felt invisible. She remembered the letters, the love notes, and the laughter that had once filled the house. Somewhere inside, she felt a spark, a reminder that love could survive, not because it was easy, but because it was chosen. "I don't know what the future holds," she said finally, "but I'm willing to see if honesty can guide us. No more hiding, no more pretending." Michael nodded, relief and gratitude mixing on his face. "I can do that," he said softly. Over the next weeks, the household found a new rhythm. Clara still walked her paths, still wrote in her notebook, still spent time discovering herself. But she allowed Michael to be present cautiously, giving him space to show he was committed to change. They spoke more openly, no longer avoiding uncomfortable truths. Evan noticed too, and began to trust that his family could survive, even if things weren't perfect. One evening, Clara found herself alone on the porch. Evan asleep inside, Michael quietly reading in the living room. The air smelled of wet leaves and winter frost. She felt a calm she hadn't felt in months. The betrayal hadn't disappeared. It lingered as a shadow she couldn't ignore. But alongside it was clarity. She understood now that life wasn't about perfection. It was about honesty, resilience, and the willingness to face difficult truths. Evan joined her on the porch silently, holding a mug of cocoa. "Mom," he said softly, "you're stronger than anyone I know." Clara smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "Maybe I'm finally learning to be." The stars reflected on the dark lake, still and steady, and for the first time in a long while, Clara didn't feel broken. She felt whole enough to move forward. The coming months would not be easy. Healing never was. But Clara had learned the most important lesson. She could survive heartbreak. She could reclaim herself, and she could face the truth without fear. And sometimes that was enough to start over. When Michael eventually came to the porch, he sat beside her without words. They watched the night together, sharing the quiet, letting the air fill the spaces that had once been heavy with lies. Clara felt her heart steady. She didn't know if love would fully return or if trust could be completely rebuilt. But she understood this. She had the strength to choose her own path, to protect herself, and to accept love only on her terms. The betrayal had left its mark, but it had also shown her something more: her own courage, her own worth, and the possibility that even shattered hearts could learn to beat again. Clara closed her eyes for a moment, letting the cool wind brush against her face. She whispered to herself, not with anger, not with regret, but with hope. "I will survive. I will be happy. And I will never forget who I am." Evan watched quietly from the doorway, seeing his mother not as someone defeated, but as someone rising stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. And for Clara, that night, that quiet, that moment, it's the beginning of everything she would choose for herself from now on.